we go. Okay. It says we're live.
Hello.
Hello. I know. Okay. We might have a fussy baby during this conversation.
It's okay. I feel fussy today too. There we go. Yeah, we're on.
Oh, good.
I see it.
Oh,
this is
dear.
error loading.
Oh, dear. It says what?
Are we? So it's error loading.
Error loading. Okay. Ooh. Uh-oh. This is going to be tricky.
Can anybody see us?
Hello? Anybody? Hi, honey. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, hi, Katie.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Oh, my baby's not so great right now,
Yeah.
though.
I'm just gonna get Joel to check, I think.
Okay, good. Make sure we're...
Joel.
Oh, my mom says we're there. Hi, Mama. Oh. Mom, I need you to come over here and help with my baby. That's not a funny joke.
Oh, yeah, we have people. Hi.
My mom can't actually come across the border, which is very sad.
Okay.
So. Oh, yep. We're live.
Hi, Debbie. Hi, Erica.
Oh, hi, Katie.
Hi, Natasha.
I love seeing your face.
How's it going?
It's going awesome. Just amazing. Yep.
Olivia wanted to wake up for this conversation. She's psyched.
She's really ready to talk about loneliness. It's so sad.
And I just came back from the grocery store, so feeling a little bit of that too. What a lonely, horrible.
Oh my goodness. How did you feel like, did you wear a mask?
I did.
Did it feel like most people were wearing masks or?
Yeah, actually.
Talking to each other? Yeah.
Yeah. People are definitely not keeping the 2 meters here at especially Costco or Super or anywhere really, but everyone is wearing a mask now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a few that don't, but I just hate it because you feel so moist and
moist. Feel moist. Yeah.
That's my red face.
No. Man, all right. Take a breath. We are supposed to talk about loneliness, which is heavy. That's a heavy topic. So what do you think about, do you think that is sort of obviously just heightened in our current situation?
Yeah.
It's hot.
Yes,
Something's
Erica,
hot.
it is.
So hot. Is it hot outside?
Well, I mean, even for the mask.
For the mask?
Like it's hot and moist and disgusting. Yeah, I think it's definitely heightened over the COVID thing, for sure. We're both moms. I feel like that's a really great way to feel a certain kind of loneliness.
Yep.
I feel like depending on if you're an introvert versus extrovert, there's a loneliness that we deal with in a different way, I think.
That's so true.
And then I would feel for me, I don't know about but how I feel loneliness is like that in-depth soul loneliness, sometimes.
Yeah.
Of you get this trench, and even if you have friends and amazing family around you, there's like this part of yourself that no one can touch.
Yep.
I don't know I don't know if anyone feels that way or not, but for me, for sure. And as a believer, I really believe no one can touch my soul, which is really great in one way, but also great in the sense that only Jesus can actually touch that part of me, I live alone, but I realize you can. Yes. My mom's a widow, actually. So I was talking to her about this too. And she just moved in with us. So now it's poor woman. It's now at the cottage. So that tells you. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, funny. That's awesome. Oh.
But living alone, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can be in a crowd but still feel lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel loneliness? How do you experience loneliness?
Yeah, there are so many, I think, different sort of stages for me that I've gone through with some loneliness. So I think, being super introverted as a kid, man, I'm so sorry, guys, that I really do have kind of a fussy baby.
No, I like this.
She's not usually, though. So sad. Hi.
It's great.
Hi, everybody.
She gives us background music. I like it.
Oh,
she threw love for us.
It's so special. Yeah, so there's a part of me that felt so invisible and unknown. So even as a kid, like I remember third grade, walking, like the recess bell rang and we were going back into school. And I just said third grade, which is American, which Aaliyah would always correct me if I say grade 3.
You're leaving us. You're turning American on us.
I remember seeing somebody in a wheelchair and wishing it were me. So, I mean, that's terrible. But feeling like at least they're seen. And so feeling like the broken parts of me go unnoticed and unseen and unknown. And I had such an ache to be seen and known in those places. And so I think we long for that, for connection on so many levels. And there's the social, there's lots of levels that are all really meaningful, but yeah, it gets also just to that very core, that core level of who we are. And even, and it, like you're saying, there's not really one thing that's going to meet your whole soul in that place of connection. So, even in your marriage, you can have even a real good marriage and still experience loneliness, because even that spouse or that partner, okay, honey, oh dear, that spouse or that partner isn't going to be able to connect with every single aspect of who you are, maybe over time, but in one given moment, or it takes, that's the beauty of the long haul of marriage is, after decades of being together, you have been able to really connect on so many of those different levels and so many of those different places of your soul. But one of the things that's really interesting about being a believer is that question of how much is it just kind of a Christian cliche thing to say, well, you have Jesus, you shouldn't feel lonely if you have Jesus, versus how much is that legit? Like, no, he really can fill me and satisfy me. So I think that's been a fascinating part of my journey, is discovering how much Jesus, wants to meet me in those places of loneliness, through grief and stuff like that. I learned, I just started calling them to recognize empty spaces. There are empty spaces inside of me. And I also, just through grief and reading, was like, okay, so you're kind of supposed to make friends with your empty spaces. And there's a whole kind of thing about loneliness that can turn into really rich solitude and have, oh, darling, oh, this isn't going well over here. What's happening? This isn't normal. No, it's not. Oh, baby girl. But at the same time, we are so wired for people and for connection, and that's a part of who we are. So it doesn't make somebody ungodly, to need to be connected to people. Mm-hmm. And so, we're not supposed to be. So the whole idea of being satisfied in Christ I think there's so many depths to explore in that place. But here, let's do this. Let's go over here.
I would say that would be the huge part for me, is the, everyone says, what happened? Can you see me?
Oh my gosh. Katie's gone. No,
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Oh boy.
Nothing. I touched nothing.
I didn't know that. Guys, you can't see Katie, right? Oh, she's back. What in the world? Okay, she's coming on. Okay.
I didn't touch anything. I swear.
Yeah, you're there, and you're there. I'm gonna mute myself, so you keep talking, okay?
Yeah, I would say that's huge for me, because everyone says that, you should be fulfilled by Jesus. And there's a lot of, what does that mean? But then that known part, I think, is the very thing, if you have a relationship with Jesus, what I've learned that is that's why is the most fulfilling part of my relationship with Jesus, is because there's no miscommunication with Jesus. He knows me in and out. He's made me. He knows my intentions. And because the Holy Spirit's like the wind and you can't see him, he can be everywhere with me. Does that make any sense? I don't know. Is anybody with me? So, yeah, I think there's a loneliness that can happen. I think that it's nice that you brought up the marriage, Natasha, just because I think I was single for a while before I got married, right? And so I got married a little later in life. And so it would be really easy for me to say my loneliness is going to be way better. It'll be solved by marriage, but that's not true. And I also think it was awesome because before I was married and I was single and thought it's greener on the other side because they're not lonely, God really helped me. Not that, you aren't lonely, you just wish for human contact. I'm not talking about that kind of lonely, but in the sense of he helped me realize, listen, if this is going to be you and me the rest of my life, are you going to be okay? Can you start believing that I am with you everywhere, that I'm with you in all circumstances, and that no one else can touch your soul, that I'm going to speak truth to you, that I'm always with you? Is that going to be enough for you? And I think that's huge,
Mm-hmm.
Hey, sis.
Yeah.
It's important to define what loneliness is first. I think it's different for everyone. That's it. I was thinking of what are synonyms for loneliness? Some people call it empty.
Mm-hmm.
Some people call it sadness.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is, depending on your loneliness, it depends on your need.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can be lonely and all you need is, you just don't have anyone to talk to. I was talking to my mom before, and she said, as a widow, one of the things that she really enjoyed was going to work, because her loneliness was because she wanted just to talk and share about her day. It could be just, that's the easy need of it.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Or it could go even more in depth of, I'm emotionally need a little bit more support. And so if I don't have somebody that I can bare my soul to and discuss this stuff with, or it could be, I'm not needed in this world. Nothing points to me being needed in this world. And that could be your loneliness. I think that's why loneliness is so unique, because depending on the person, it points to a need.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the dreaming can come in, is if we all look at our loneliness, why are you lonely? And then we can dream a little bit about, God doesn't want us to stay in our loneliness.
Yeah.
So to meet that need, we have to look at okay, why am I feeling lonely? What is this actually all about?
Yeah, I love that. Yes, April. I love that so much. I think, I love, rather than hearing, oh, if you have Jesus, you shouldn't be lonely, or, I mean, it's ludicrous, really, but at the same time, learning to engage with Christ and letting him lead us to places where those needs are met. Like, he actually does want us to live the abundant life. He wants us to be filled and to be fulfilled. And that actually includes, our relationships, just, our health. And so I think for me, the gateway usually comes through Christ, like usually to meet the need. I'm never meeting that need without Christ. You know what I mean? Like, he's continually kind of the gateway through which I meet that need, but at the same time, it's not like it's isolation with just Christ. It's through it's in my marriage. It's in the working of my marriage, of my relationships, my friendships, my relationship with my parents. My mom is on there somewhere. And I just talked to my dad and told him I was mad at him about something.
There you go.
and anyway, so, relationships and connection and being known, there's a working out that takes place. But that for me, I learned that first with Christ. And yeah. What do you think, Katie?
I would say yes, because I think it's really easy to you can go out, if you're lonely, it's really easy to be unhealthy and just go for whatever you're missing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what the world would say, like, well, what are you like?
Yeah.
You can have, I'm using a widow just because my mom, right? So you can have a widow in front of you and just think she's lonely. So let's just give her a place to live, or let's just give her a check, or let's just, like, without ever talking to her, like, I think we do that with ourselves. Like, we can put ourselves in a box and say, depending on if you're an introvert and extrovert too, right? Like, an extrovert can feel like, I just need people around me, and they could have an immediate fix of, I just need to go hang out with somebody, which maybe that is. But if Jesus is the gateway, you're like, Lord, is this just about getting together with people, or is there something of value I'm missing in my life? Like, because I do think we either want a quick fix of loneliness, let's just go fix it, or it can become so dark. Like, loneliness is I feel like that's one of the key ways the enemy fights us. Like, say I'm over spiritualizing it maybe, but there's nothing quite dark as loneliness, because when you're alone, you feel trapped. You feel like there's no answer. You feel like, to get out of this pit, I've got to come up with something in myself, the power of self. And we all know, like, we don't have it in us, like, I think there's nothing the enemy likes more than to make people feel isolated and to make people feel unneeded.
That's really good.
I don't know. Guys, do you think so? God uses and places people in lives to meet those. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's why. I think, Tina, you're right. I think God uses the people around us to remind us of, like, hey, you're not alone. Hey, let's do this together. Yeah, I mean, that's literally why he created humankind. He looked at Adam and said, men should not be alone. It was not enough to be alone, and he had, I mean, I love animals. I'm all about the lions, but Adam had a lion there with them, and Jesus was all like, he needs someone else, like, there is something beautiful about that. And I don't think we know, there is a hope, I believe, like, dealing with depression and anxiety myself, there's that beautiful balance of, like, let's be authentic and say, there are days I feel dark. There are days that I feel heavy. Actually, today has been a day I felt heavy for more spiritual reasons. But So that, to be authentic in that, but also to know like that's not me needing to depend on people, but it's also allowing people to come beside me and say like for me, when somebody prays for me, even if they're not near me, even like Natasha, there's times that like I just ask you, and that helps my loneliness. Because in that, whatever I'm feeling that's weighing me down and heavy, all of a sudden I know someone that is not only bringing me to Jesus' feet, but they're loving me enough. They think I matter enough to bring me to Jesus' feet.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's why the mustard seeds matter. That like, I just get so like, that's why it's so important to like say things to people that we don't, that we think they should assume they know, like, obviously you matter, Natasha, but why do I not tell you that every, once in a while? Make sure you know that, and do the little things like pray and use the creativity of the Holy Spirit to do things for each other to show that you actually matter,
Yes, the gift of encouragement and the ability to, like we've talked so much, Katie, about soul talk and just speak directly into somebody, to their real self, like just, to speak life to somebody in a way that is actually going to bring courage and life to their soul. It's really vulnerable to do. Like, it makes sense why it can be uncomfortable, like that can be, people can be nervous to,
absolutely,
to really engage at that level. To say just, this is, you're in the grocery store, or you're even in the church foyer, or, your places where people are going to engage in conversation. They're going to say, how are you? Whatever, but you don't feel like anybody, you can go through all of that and not feel like anybody has spoken directly, so that it's actually touching you in that place where you're longing to be known and to be touched. And I think that's such an art. Like, learning how to do that is such an art. And for me, I feel like I mess it up all the time. Sometimes it's like, well, my husband will tease me sometimes because I pick up on so many things, but not everybody really wants me to comment on all those things. If somebody might actually be having a hard day, like they might really not, it might not be a big deal, and they really don't actually want me to like empathize with them in that moment. They might just want to go over it and move on. And so Brent will he's more like, I don't want to talk about it. I literally just want to get over that and move on. Like, I don't want to, whereas sometimes it's like, okay, sometimes we don't know how it's going to land on somebody to bring something really real. And like, I'm seeing this in you, can I touch that place that I'm seeing is lonely, is crying out right now? Or, so it's, it can be awkward. It can be messy. And yet, this is, it's recognizing and acknowledging that we're as human beings, that we have souls, and our souls are eternal. They're made for eternity, and they are designed for oneness, like you talked about. And, that in Genesis, the story of being made in the image of God can be exegeted so that oneness in that whole description of Adam and Eve's creation is to expose. So it's not good that man should be alone, but that it's very much about that we're made in the image of God in the way that we are one in diversity. That specifically our oneness in diversity is one of the key ways that we are made in the image of God. And so we're created for that oneness with God, but in that is this, gorgeous, complex body in which we're all one with each other. And so when that's broken, which we all are, we're born into that brokenness, that's a broken connection. we're left with these empty places, these corners, of our soul that don't ever get touched. And that you can feel just so deeply unloved and unseen and unknown and unworthy. That to me leads to depression in a lot of cases. And, it affects us. It's just a real thing. It affects our health. If somebody goes every day feeling like nobody will see me, nobody will touch the places in my soul that are crying out, that's death. Like that feels like death.
And your body feels that. I mean, physiologically, we are connected. Like, I mean, we know that, but the more studying that I do on that with Caroline Leaf and everything, it's so crazy how God has made the mental and emotional health connected to our physical health. And so a lot of people don't want to be opened up to that side of things. Like, well, no, that's not why I'm feeling it. But if we're able to look at that and say, maybe that's why I'm not sleeping well, maybe it's a loneliness problem. I don't think it is, but my body's telling me maybe it is, And I also think the diversity thing, like we talk about like trying to reach out to people, but also receiving that. Like if I'm lonely and Natasha, you come to me and you're trying to help me, you see that, and you feel like you're saying all the wrong things, I also need to have grace for you. Like, because we're lonely, sometimes we can put ourselves into our expectations being a certain way. But I need to see, you know what? Natasha's being really curious about me. That is something. Like, that it means I'm not alone. Even if she's not saying the right thing, she seems to care, And I think we have to be careful of putting our loneliness in this place, this box, because then we're looking for something specific to get us out of it. And I do believe the Holy Spirit will speak specifically. He has many times in my life through a person, but I also think we should just give grace over people. And when they're trying to help, that means I need to communicate more. Well, I don't think that's it, Natasha. What else could it be? Take the journey on with them and have grace for those that are trying to help too.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did Sis say? Unfortunately, our world teaches you are strong if you can do it on your own, which is lie, and why suicide becomes so prevalent even in the church. Christ didn't create us to be alone. That's why this pandemic has been hard on so many. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting though. Talk to me for a minute about dependency. So one of the things for me, there are so many parts of my journey that it's like, okay, nobody can actually walk this path for me. Like there's a degree to which I have to own my own life. And that.
So is that mean like there is going to be, no matter who you are, a degree of loneliness, do you think? Because of that?
I think probably seasons or some way, for me going from, for me being able to progress forward from my season of widowhood, nobody could help me with that. I had so much help, but nobody could do the work that it took for me to do that. That was literally it was so intense. It was so deep. So I had support like crazy, in my friend Liz Brewer was always my just daily, just more, she could handle more than a normal human being. She has an incredible gift of mercy. And so I always want to sing her praises about she just loved me intensely for, when they heard about Lynn's death, they drove the 3.5 or whatever it was hour drive and just showed up at my door. And then she was just there day or night, daily, no matter what, they had all kinds of things going on in their own lives. And they just, they let me be selfish for a very long time. They gave without taking, and they just supported for a very long time. More than what most people could, so I had, and then there were different parts of that journey where it's like I learned, okay. So I wrote about a lot of this stuff, but I haven't, anyway, I wrote, so it's always running through my brain. Anyway, but there's one thing I wrote about this that was who holds my soul. So that season was so I learned that it was like, I'm needing somebody, this is so heavy, I can't carry it. But I know that if I have a season where God has brought this person in my life who has stepped up to be like, I'm going to help you, I'm going to support you, I can't actually put the whole weight on them. Like I can receive some support from them, but they've got their own stuff. No matter who they are, they've got their own soul they're trying to carry, And so I learned that I could lean on people for a certain amount of time, and then I would have to move on. And not like lose that relationship, but just like I couldn't put the weight on them of what I was carrying for that long, or it would break the relationship. And I didn't want that, so, but then I would move into different seasons and God would provide different people. So some people, that was hurtful. It was like, why didn't you didn't lean on me the way I thought you would, and what I couldn't explain to them was like, you can't, you couldn't do it. You couldn't take the weight of this. And so, but then God gave me this person over here, and I was basically going to die if I didn't have somebody. So I leaned on them for a season. And so it was this really interesting navigating, but through that, I knew, there's just a degree to which nobody can fully walk the path that God has laid for me, but me. Yeah. But in that, I have to trust that He's holding my soul. He is the sustainer of my life. He's holding my soul, and He's lifting me up, and He's carrying me through in a supernatural way. And so being able to depend on Him in that, when I've felt, mostly completely emptiness, and then move into a realm of being able to build new relationships. So loneliness was, there were nights in my home as a widow that, loneliness, I kind of reference my writing that I've not published. So anyway, that's not helpful, but, it was personified. It was like a dark figure in my home when I would tuck those girls into bed, and then I am by myself. It was like a haunting, almost like a dark haunting figure in my home that was going to destroy me. I named him loneliness, and that's what that experience was like. But I learned to live with emptiness, but in a way that I knew that somehow God was carrying me supernaturally beyond that emptiness. I had people all along the way, but I couldn't put all of that on somebody. And then I couldn't with Brent, I couldn't, even when I remarried, I felt, actually it was one of the hardest seasons of my whole journey, because for everybody else, it was the happy ending. Oh, I'm fixed now, but for me to build a new relationship with Brent and lose all my support for all the emptiness and all the brokenness I still had, that was lonely. That was really hard and really lonely, and took about 4 to 5 years. So, there's this just interesting dynamic of how, for me, I've had to own, I've even, moved to a new country, and Brent and I were separated for almost a year in immigration, and, these different, and then being in leadership is lonely. There's different, there's a part of my life that ages ago, I somewhere along this, I don't know, you can tell me if this sounds really unhealthy, but I somewhere along the line owned, there's a part that I have to own of my own life where I'm dependent on Christ, and He's carrying me through, whether I have somebody or not. So that being said, that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt me when I don't have somebody. It doesn't mean I still don't need all of those same things, but it means I have moved through seasons where I've not had those needs met, and I've been able to move through them and build a healthy life still beyond that. versus staying in that place of need and never being satisfied and living in disappointment and bitterness. Does that make sense?
I just feel like that's it though. Like we're so scared to be cliche to say that like Jesus is the only one that touches our soul, but like he's also the only one that can move with us in that. You know, like when he doesn't want it to be that way. He wants us to have people around us. Absolutely. But for anybody listening, like I also just feel like everyone should know there are parts of my life, again, even with an amazing husband, amazing sister, amazing family, amazing friends, that because I've gone through similar seasons, and it's not like yours, but different, of loneliness, where you have to own it. You know, it's almost like you have to press into it and say, come here, lonely figure, come here, dark figure.
Make it
come
a friend.
Sit with me instead of get out of my house. It's okay. Like I'm going to face this and own this. So if you're going to stay in my house, this is how it's going to work. Yeah. I got to figure out how it's going to work if no one else shows up. And I think what is beautiful about loneliness, because everyone's going to be like, oh, Katie, you're so annoying. But it really is transformational for me. It was in those moments of loneliness and darkness that I realized no one can, like, I have to own this for myself. And the only way that I can own this, because I don't have the power to do this myself, is to start believing what God says. Like not from here, like move it from here to here. Like start walking in, Katie, I have told you, you are not alone. Right now, you only see that dark figure in this room. But I have told you, you are not alone. So right now, you have to lean into the loneliness enough that you want to get out of it. Like some people, like, let's be honest, we like staying in our loneliness. We like feeling sometimes that, you know, we have a reason to feel poor us, and we know kind of how to stay in the loneliness and make it work for us. So we kind of don't want it to go, if that makes sense, you know, like, because we've learned to live with this dark figure in our house. But I think when you start to embrace how tired, how sad, how empty you are, you realize this will suck the life out of me if I do not decide what I believe. You know, I mean, that is the gospel of Jesus Christ of, do you believe what I say at the end of the day? And I think for me, that's in those nights that I felt overwhelmed, or these days that like I'm feeling it. That's literally, Natasha, that's what holds me up, you know, like, and again, I have, you know, even this morning feeling it, my kids, like God totally used my kids. It sounds really bad, but I'm not usually a mom that's like, oh, my kids, like I love my kids. But this morning I was just like, oh, my kids, like what a precious gift that God just like gave me to refresh my soul, you know? And that's a perfect example. Like God used them, but like, they're not meeting that direct. They're meeting that need, you know, but it was because God allowed them, you know, made the connection of their presence meeting my need, you know, like, there's something about owning your own life. I think of dying, like I hate to think anyone would die alone, because I feel like, not that I've experienced it yet, but I've thought of it a lot. And I feel like dying and transitioning from being alive to gone, no one can do that with you. Like someone could be there with me physically, but no one can take that journey transitioning from here to heaven with me. Like, it doesn't matter how scary I think it is, at the end of the day, I need to own that. And I need to be prepared for that. And I feel like that is a loneliness that kind of helps me evaluate, where's your soul at, Katie? Like, do you feel, I want that? Like, that drives me. I think of Enoch. Like Enoch walked with God.
Yeah.
You know, so the transition from here to heaven, there was just no transition. Like he just
Yeah.
went, because he was so much walking with God. He just went to heaven, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's what I love is, yes, there's absolutely a time that we need people, but also I feel like there is a hope for us in Jesus Christ, where we can come to the point where we can feel so isolated and alone that the transition of dying, which no one can come with us, we can actually take that with Jesus. Like we can feel his presence in that moment. Like when Stephen was martyred and being rocks thrown at him,
Oh my gosh.
he was smiling, you know?
Yeah.
Like that to me says he was lonely. he was alone and being rocks throwing at him, but something inside of him did not feel alone, because he knew something. He knew not from his head, but in his heart, like, Lord, you're with me. I'm not isolated in this.
That's
so
right.
the story, sorry, I get passionate because just
Mm-hmm.
dying and martyrdom and all that, it makes me want to get to that place more and more with Jesus, that companionship. I mean, we say it's a relationship with Jesus, but like, that's what we're talking about, you know?
Yes. And I think I think you exactly nailed it. So it has nothing to do with, there's just so much compassion for like, there's no question whether or not we 100% need each other. We need people. And at the same time, we need to be able to hear the voice of God and, be a Peter who will step out onto the water where nobody else has ever gone, because Jesus is there and he hears his voice and he's calling him. And so he goes. And so being able to, or becoming that kind of person will be lonely. Like there will be loneliness on that journey, which doesn't mean that that's makes loneliness good or, okay, because it's not.
Right.
But it's just a part of it. It's a part of owning our life and our faith in Christ in such a way that we're willing to go to places even when no one around us is going to go there.
Yeah.
But what we do with that is always become better at building connections with others. We become the voice of encouragement. And I think of, the Beatitude, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Did I say that right? Am I saying the right one?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But there's something about, peacemakers and building bridges. It's like building connection. And so one of the things that, I think is so beautiful about David and him being able to say that, how he can encourage himself in the Lord, is there's a need, and again, this is a little bit, you find this in leadership. There are times, if I didn't have you, Katie, if I didn't have my few that I can, anytime I do, I have my few that I can text and say, I just need encouragement. I just need to know that but at the same time, there are lots of times where I can't access those people when I need them. And I'm looking at a group of people that I have to inspire and I have to encourage and I have to empower. So I have to know how to, in myself, find that. I have to know how to encourage myself in the Lord and then give it away and then give that to other people. And so there's I can't be completely dependent. Again, it doesn't mean that we're not actually just totally, we all need it, like it's just, we do, but we go places with Christ where we're lonely. And we're stepping into those places and we're doing it by faith in a way that is calling him to move into new realms that we then get to impart to others. And there's nothing more richer than that, and that can build relationships in totally new and deeper and rich ways than we would ever know otherwise. But there's loneliness on that journey.
Yeah. And I think Lynette, you bring up a perfect point of
That's so
there's
beautiful.
even something when like people don't necessarily know that you're lonely.
Yeah.
Like you do look to God to say, like, I'm lonely, speak into this. And then it's happened to me as well, Lynette, like even in the last couple weeks with Design Disciple, which I'll be launching soon, but
Yay!
that has been like a spiritual battle to a degree that I don't think some people even know. And then like all of a sudden, 3 or 4 people in different groups, different realms, different conversations say the same thing or say the exact thing that hits me that I need in that moment. And all they have done, you know, they've just been faithful in their journey with God. You know, like they love me and everything, but they have no idea some of the what I actually need to hear, but because they're being faithful and reading their Bible, in being healthy spiritually and emotionally, God used them. You know, and I also think because we all experience loneliness, that's what makes us want to fight for other people. That's what makes us say, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this to you or not, but I'm going to, just in case. Exactly. Because there's nothing worse than being lonely. You know, like I would rather say it and you say, no, that's not it, than to walk away and for you to think that you don't matter. Or it is awkward. Can we just talk about how it can be awkward? Like, I used to work at, what's that pink tutu store? Claire's. Like a tomboy, and I used to work at Claire's.
I don't think I knew that. Oh my
really?
God.
Oh yeah, I used to like pierce babies' ears, and little kids would come in and say, I want a little tutu. And I'd be like, this one?
That's amazing.
Anyways, I had an amazing boss. So I loved working there. Not for the necklaces and all that stuff, but I remember like, I just really loved the people, the customers. And I could tell when I said something as like, I love your bag. Where did you get it? Like, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
That's just a good point. Like they just brightened up. They got excited. They felt connected to me all of a sudden. Yeah. And I just was amazed to seeing in retail, talking to customers, and like, that's how lonely people can feel, is like, just when you notice someone. Like we could combat so much loneliness if we just started like complimenting people for what you see in them.
Yeah. Can I say something about that, Katie?
Oh yeah, that's all I'd say. I was just as long as you don't make fun of me for working at Claire's. No, I make fun of myself too, but
I will.
Erica.
I love it. Yeah, but no, it just, I mean, I definitely was super trapped in my loneliness, like especially in my teenage years and earlier young adult years. Really probably until I was widowed, because of how much then it just forced me forward in all these different ways. But, but I was so afraid of people. Like I was, shy and introverted. So just that, I mean, that's such a real thing. Like I might have longed for deep connection like crazy, but at the same time, I was way too terrified to go up and say hello to anybody, So in some ways I did, but in other ways I didn't. And so I noticed in my life and even like, I would be hyper evaluating myself in conversations and
I'm still hyper evaluating.
Yes.
I'm so bad at it.
Evaluating myself. And so I'm so caught up in myself doing that, that then I walk away and I'm more concerned about how did I do than having had any kind of real actual connection and paying attention to the other human being. So I feel like God has been able to bring me to new places of freedom where I've been almost celebrating in this, quarantine time. We're in our neighborhood. It's been lovely here since March, so people just have been walking constantly. And I mean, we know our whole we're like friends with everybody in our neighborhood, and just the amount of freedom I have in just being able to be like, how is it going? You know, and the conversations, and then it just brings about instant friendship because people are so longing for that. And it's so easy now. But it was like, that is not easy. You know, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying I've had about 2 decades of like being so terrified to speak to another human being. And I still have that in different contexts, but there's contexts in which now I'm very comfortable. But there are certain places I'll still feel really intimidated and have to just kind of work hard to like, I can just be myself, say hello, you know.
But that's, I think, a really important point, though, because I think even my mom, she'll say all the time, like, "Oh, you're an extrovert, Katie. It's easy for you," and like, it's not been. Like the reason that I do talk to people, because my dad was just like this. He'd sit down at the mall with a person on the bench. We'd go off.
Yes.
We'd come back and like he saved the person.
Yes.
To Jesus. Like it was just amazing. And so I get compared to my dad a lot. I don't do that. I wish I did. But I think I'm actually terrified inside. But the value of connecting to me was enough. Honestly, the grace of God, the want of it, and I think seeing it happen in front of my eyes also, that it happened enough that I was like, oh, I feel so uncomfortable, but there's a value of connection I want to have that will push me through. And so now, like you said, once you practice something more, you know, it's really easy. You start to feel those places, but like there are times that like I still like the inside I'm going the whole time I'm talking.
Yes.
You know, like, and I think that's why actually when I speak, it's funny. Because this is just but this is proves my point. For those who know me, I'm comfortable, but going to a conference, they're like, who's this little girl? Like, she's just like quiet and like, how is she going to speak? And then I get up there and I'm a firecracker. Like I get passionate and they're like, whoa, like, I didn't think that like you're going to do that, because as soon as I get off stage, what I do matters more than who I am. That's how I feel, because people are thinking about how I spoke, how did she do, all these things. And there can be an intense loneliness because the evaluation is on what I did. And I think that's really an important distinction of when we talk to people and we're saying like, this is what I see in you. You know, it's going to take time and effort, but also like to go after who they are, like to give grace over people and your neighbors enough to be like, it's enough just to care about who they are, that you say hello, that you hold the door. You know, like that stuff is not done as much nowadays, unfortunately. Like, you know, over here in Canada, it is like, we'll wait 5 minutes if we see someone behind us to keep the door open for them, right? But
what do you think we should touch on social media at all? Just in connection to loneliness? What do you guys think in terms of, especially, I mean, everybody's kind of getting a chance to test it out these days. Like, do we, you know, how much can we connect virtually in a healthy way that you know, brings real life and encouragement? I mean, and there's certainly, like, it certainly does. You know, there's certainly, so like Katie, you know, I love this. I love talking to you. And we're really far away from each other.
I will say, usually I don't like social media. Like I mean, Erica's on here. That's a perfect example. You know, like, I love to be with people. I love Erica, but because she's in Wisconsin, that's really hard. And I don't like the screen. So I'm horrible at connecting with her. So it's a bummer. But then at the same time, like I get to see her and Chris do these services, and like, what a blessing. You know, like I'm not there with her, but I can see what she's doing. You know, like there is that aspect of the bonuses but also making sure we understand that's very different from actual connecting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think that's why people get trapped. We can get that false pretense of like, I'm connecting. That's why, like, for church, we have to be very careful that we're getting really comfortable watching it on screen. Grateful we can do that. But if we end up with just that, how we would be missing such a big puzzle piece, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I so agree. Yeah. I don't think we need to go there, but just, that's just one of the very forefront and complex issues, for next gen is just, they already were more comfortable connecting virtually first. Yeah. I'll meet face to face and have a real conversation with you after I've connected with you virtually and decided if I like it or not, So now after COVID, even, how much more has that maybe been solidified in the next gen, and how how that's just an interesting part of what the future is going to look like when, that generation is growing up and leading the way. Anyway, so
yes, Lynette, hugs. There's something about physical touch, right? Like,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Loneliness, that's huge. Just that there is a physical aspect to us, and physical touch is a love language.
Yes.
Poor Joel. I was like, can you touch me? Can I cuddle? Can you just hug me right now?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, I don't think I will ever forget. I know that I do point back to this a lot, and it's not that I'm not trying to make it more than it is or whatever, but just because of how much I learned in that season,
absolutely,
when I was alone. I remember the first time, I don't remember where I was or who it was, but brushing somebody's arm. So it might have, like, whether it was like at church or at the grocery store, or, and there was some way in which skin touched skin in my arm, brushing somebody's, and it was like a shock wave through my system. Like, it was like I was starved, literally. Like, it was just such an intense. And then I'm just going to say this is like not even what we're talking about, but when I began to date Brent, you are not single after you have been physically intimate with a spouse. That was not to me, they are nothing the same. Like dating, or like being single and dating after I was married versus before I was married, before I had ever had sex, before, it was, I prayed to God. It was like, I believe in all the same boundaries. So for my heart, as broken as it was like, for me to actually get married again was completely terrifying. Like, my heart was not ready. Like, my heart, I could not trust that. It was terrifying. But at the same time, I was starving for affection and intimacy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I completely understand people who in this situation don't marry. They move in with people and don't marry again. I prayed. I was like, God, I'm basically committing to fast and basically committing to starvation. And I'll go through with this and I'll honor these boundaries, but nothing about it felt natural. And that's something I say very often, but it was like, that was just a whole incredibly different experience, both emotionally and physically. Like, actually physically, it was like I'm physically starving, and I almost feel like I have to go through the marriage when I feel so broken I can't even trust marriage. But, like, I felt I was just caught. It was just like a trap of, this is just going to be horrible no matter what.
Yeah, because there's so much happening on the inside of you, right? Like, that just, again, points to that we're all so connected. Natasha, what about this? Tia says, how can you have a healthy community online? What do you think?
Yeah.
Especially let's say even COVID's not happening.
Yeah,
Because you can
it's
still
huge.
watch church online there. How do you keep it healthy?
Okay, well, I mean, this is not, take this right now, for example. So what are, are we experiencing, are you guys experiencing connection through, this conversation right now? And then, healthy, so, okay, let me just clarify before I continue. So healthy community online, are we talking about, are we going into actually like bullying and stuff like that online, like Facebook bullying and this kind of thing, or just in the sense of like, can we meet virtually as a group, and have some healthy community is what I'm more thinking about. Anyway, so correct me if I'm wrong and if I should be going a different direction. But yeah, for me, there's absolutely something to it, that you can have some healthy connection and community virtually, in the sense of what we're doing right now. Like for me, this is something, like I am talking to Katie and I adore Katie and I love seeing your names and hearing your like, I feel like you're right there. I feel like we're in a conversation together, and that's rich. Like I'm going to close this and walk away feeling like I talked to you today, sort of.
Yeah, no, for sure. Me too.
And so there's something there. But at the same time, if it was like an iceberg image, or going in the, okay, sweet, right direction. For example, what we just talked about, touch, it wouldn't mean, there's so many realms of who we are as human beings that don't get touched through this kind of community. So I think it's very positive. I think it can be very positive. And I think it's something, like when there's nothing, this is something. So for example, like there are people that I mentor and disciple that I almost never see in person. I might meet somebody at a conference or something, and then I stay in touch. And I have one sweet girl that she's like, well, I'm Marco Polo. I was like, okay, well, Marco Polo. And so, we just do all these little Marco Polos back and forth. And so, okay, that to me, I know her, like I have a real, but I've not, there's still an entire world that she lives in that I don't know, that for me to feel, like I have real deep community where I'm living life alongside somebody, there's just a lot missing when it's only online. So I don't know if that helps. It's not like an answer or anything, but just, I think even in this experience right now, we can see there's something, but at the same time, it doesn't mean there's something so much richer that I long for, and I believe we need, that being able to live life together and healthy physical touch, and all the different ways that just relationship and community impact our lives. I don't think we'll ever be able to replace, face to face, but I'm okay with using this platform for what it does, and in a positive way. And I think it does something. I don't know if that helps at all.
No, I think that's great. Especially because hopefully whatever you're watching, hopefully whoever you're connecting with is actually helping you in your mission of your life.
Yeah.
If it's in the right way, hopefully I'm gaining truth from this so that I can go and live and be a better disciple. Hopefully this is part of my discipleship for my neighbors and for my friends around here, and for, like this should just hopefully, I think, spur us on to, who we're helping around, or who we're growing with, or who needs us in front of us,
Yes, which hope. I'm going to say, because I'm so sorry I cut you off, Katie. I'm going to throw in there, we're past. I'm so sorry. It's very rude. We're past our hour, but one of the things I actually meant to talk about, and my, little baby in my arms may be distracting me from it, but for me, a huge part of my journey was that I I think, again, this kind of became intensified for me through just the grief journey, but whatever. Even beforehand, as an introvert, really just like my family, we grew up watching movies a lot together. And it's just been an interesting thing that became a coping mechanism of escape. So it was a tricky thing because on the one hand, as an introvert with my family, it was a bonding experience for us to sit down and watch a movie together. But what I learned, what happened when I was alone was it turned into a coping mechanism that was fake connection. So I could watch something that would stir my emotions, whatever. And it was a distraction. The Grief Recovery Handbook talked about short-term coping mechanisms versus long-term. And one of the short terms was fantasy. And so I've put it in that category, whether that's right or not. So I knew what was happening, but I was like, well, my other options apparently are, become an alcoholic, go have sex with a lot of people. Like, there are these really
Netflix.
horrible, or Netflix. It was like, if I'm desperate, a show, this is probably the least of the bad options.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it was almost like this is way too extreme. So you're going to think this is like so extreme, but this is just how I think through things like crazy like this. So it was almost like an addiction in the sense of like, I would feel like I legit need an escape right now.
Yeah.
Like I need an escape in order to get through this night or to the next day and so anyway, that was actually difficult to break. And it was years really of me praying through like, but what is it, God? Like, what's the thing? Like, what's it doing in me that is making it like this? Like, it's just, I'm not watching bad things. I'm not on it all the time. What is it that's the thing? And that was you're looking for you're looking for connection and you're choosing fake connection instead of real connection with me. And that was always it. That was always the root of, I would have conviction underneath that God wanted something else from me. But I was like, listen, you're a lot harder to connect with right now.
Yeah, that's it.
Than me to be able to sit here and escape and get this fix of fake connection. So anyway, I meant to talk about that because that was a legit journey. I mean, it probably still is on some level. Like but again, it's not bad. I don't think, I still enjoy sitting down and watching a family movie or, I don't think that's bad, but that's something I have to watch in myself of like, okay, but am I escaping and trying to create fake connection?
Yeah.
Hi,
I totally agree with that. In this, just especially in the sense of like, you could talk about how you're trying to connect. Like some people try to connect by watching porn, or some people try to connect. I think a lot of girls do it through romantic comedies. We think that's innocent,
right?
But we want that longing. We want that. So to watch it makes us feel something that we don't necessarily feel somewhere else.
Yeah, and there can be like an emotional hangover after. Like,
oh yeah,
it's a legit like, I am worse off.
Yeah, and I honestly think that's where it becomes dangerous is when it becomes a distraction. Like even this, I would hope this conversation is good for people, but if this is keeping them away from actually going to connect with something that they feel the conviction that God is calling you to do, that's a problem. Anyways, I guess we could go on forever about that.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, thank you for your comments. I love that, Rebecca. I love that you're there. I adore Rebecca Weitzel, very wonderful woman. And yeah, written letters. That I've romanticized letters. I'm like, man, I wish I lived in a day where we physically, just like sat down and wrote letters again. I have the hardest time doing it. Just it feels like there's no time. But so that's interesting. That's cool. And yeah, Tia, that's so awesome It's so true. And that's a question, again, I'm thinking about next gen, but that's, a lot, they have that legit question of like, trying to figure out what is okay, what is appropriate, that's so normal in their world, but trying to figure out and establish those boundaries without real good solid guidance.
Well, and I guess one of the easy things, I know we're going to be done, but one of the easy things is like, because Facebook's so easy to know what's going on in people's lives with pictures and with people talking and what they did for the day, that we actually think we know them. Yeah. That becomes dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Like
true. Yeah.
To actually think you know a person, but really, just because you know what they had for dinner doesn't really mean that you're actually caring for them by looking at their Facebook.
Right.
Ah, yes, the world and all of the evaluations we must do. In my sweatpants.
Yes, Katie. My pants are way too big for me. Which is a darn good thing.
I was going to say, hey girl, I could have made for you. Wearing, so. You relish in that.
No, it's bad. It's gonna be a while, guys. It's gonna be a while for me to get the body back to normal.
Girl, how long has it been since Forrest? And
no,
it's a whole other journey.
Okay, well, I never know how to end this, Katie. What do we do?
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's true. I do feel like this is great connection. Mm-hmm. Like, this is not a distraction for me. This is, especially amidst COVID, I really do feel like we're talking to everybody, and
it's so fun.
Makes me feel like we're talking about that stuff matters. Like, I need this like, it's not for anybody. This is for me too. Just keeping me healthy of how I'm going about my life and making sure my loneliness keeps in check.
Yeah.
I think it's a great reminder.
Yeah, man. Okay, well, we need your help, guys. Do you want us to talk about loneliness again, or do we move on to a new topic? What topics would you like us to talk about?
Let us know what you want to talk about.
Yep. Anyway, maybe
we're up for it. And she's back asleep.
Sleeping babies? No.
Nobody said anything. Shh.
I'm sorry if I made anybody dizzy. I know, the rocking. I was really aware of that.
Oh, yeah. No, don't worry about it, girl. You get it. You get it.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, love you all.
See everybody.
Yeah. Till next time.